Megan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. It is awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's very, very cool. And I was kind of speaking a little bit before we started the show. It's really awesome, especially whenever I get females on the show. For me, I'm very, very proud about the fact that we've got like a really awesome group of female athletes that we've had on the podcast so far. In my opinion, pound for pound, some of, well, the strongest females on the planet. So the fact that you're here is super, super, super awesome. And obviously you've got a long, long history behind you. Lots of exciting things ahead of you, hopefully. And yeah, very, very excited to get kind of stuck into this. But what fascinates me about you is the kind of the really long, diverse history of sports that you have competed in, because it is like polar opposite ends of the spectrum. Like,
because it makes no sense.
Yeah, it blows my mind. But let's kind of get into that a little bit, because you know you've done everything through gymnastics, you played like college soccer, you've done marathons, Ironmans, powerlifting, ollie lifting. Insane base of general physical preparedness. Like, where did that all start?
Oh, well, young. But like you're saying, like that whole just GPP, like I feel like I'm built for anything, you know? But then when I found lifting, I found what I was really built for. It took a little while. It took a while to get there. But when I did get there, yes, I was new, but I wasn't starting at zero, you know, which made it a lot easier as well, to be able to do some of the things that I did in the time span that I did it. So it wasn't that long since I started lifting, using quotes, because, you know, I was lifting before, just not for one RMs or anything.
Yeah, but like, I think that's the thing as well, is that when you look back at your training and stuff, when were you kind of starting to introduce like bar movements, weightlifting and stuff in with all of your other sporting work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel very fortunate when I was growing up in high school, playing soccer, to have a couple coaches that really push like strength and conditioning.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And not necessarily even barbell, but like the conditioning portion and dumbbell work, like weights, you know, which was awesome because I mean, I was in high school a little while ago at this point. I graduated high school in 2006. Okay. So it was a while ago, you know, so like say 2002 to 2006, it wasn't necessarily super cool or popular, especially if you were a female, for your teams to be strength and conditioning. So like that was cool. And then I also lucked out when I went to college to have really great strength and conditioning coaches, which isn't always true, even unfortunately to this day. You know, like colleges don't always have strength and conditioning coaches that are stellar. And I lucked out that way. And that was really my first introduction to the weight room. And I loved it. Probably more than I liked playing soccer, which was probably a problem. And probably when I should have like ding, set off a little light bulb. This is when I should take
a step back. Yeah.
Yes. But similarly, when I graduated college, it wasn't as mainstream as it is now. And social media wasn't as big as it is now. So I didn't know it was an option to compete in strength sports, which is why I started running.
You're like, everyone can do this, right? I just need a pair of shoes and let's go. Like, this is fine.
Literally. I don't think I can sit still. Like, I have to be active. And I always have been, and I never thought about it until soccer ended for me. So college soccer ended and it was like, what am I going to do now? I can't just sit here. When normal people are like, yeah, I can finally just sit here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, binge watch some, well, not Netflix then, but whatever. Gossip Girl. Those were the days. And chill out. And I went the totally opposite end of the spectrum. And got into running, got into marathons, got into Ironmans, and really just can't see my life without some type of activity. And I think it just helps with the structure of my life. And I probably have some sort of undiagnosed ADHD, you know, for real. And I'm sure a lot of athletes do.
Yeah.
That like, you know, that can't give it up and that need that structure and that thrive off that structure, never mind the activity part. But it's like a way that my days are structured, my months are structured, my years are structured. And I like it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's interesting. Like, I think we can kind of touch on this a little bit, and it'd be cool to talk about this. Like, with the fact that you have all of that structure in your training and your sports and stuff, in your sporting life, how did that, or did it kind of juxtapose your education? Was it a case of like you weren't able to concentrate in the classroom and whatever, and everything was just all about the movement, being physical, being active, like actually having to be like run about like a dog to actually like get tired and take that mental fatigue? Yeah, like I think there are a lot of people that are the same though, because I was the exact same. The exact same.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I think we need to have that stimulus to kind of to carry over as well. Like we need to have that training, and we need to have that satisfaction in our mind for us to be able to be like, okay, well, like now we can contribute like a little bit of this to here, and we can learn a little bit more or whatever in an easier manner.
Yeah, and I think some people that maybe don't have that experience find it hard to believe because you're expending energy. But anytime I've ever had the best focus, whether was in school or work-wise or whatever the task at hand is when I'm like training and in a good rhythm. The times where I'm the most tired and the least focused are typically when I'm not in a good rhythm and not working out. And typically when you're not working out, your nutrition isn't as good either, because why the heck would it be, right? And it just all starts running into each other.
It's like a snowball effect, isn't it? It just kind of compounds. And I think, you know, this kind of everything that's happened in the last year and a half has really gone to highlight that. The amount of people that, you know, really, really strong, solid foundation, making great gains, and then, oh, there's a curveball right there. And now what's going to happen? There's going to be a ton of people that just fall straight off the wagon. They fall into those reciprocating negative cycles where it's like, I don't move, I want to move less, I want to eat more, I get fatter, I don't want to move, I don't want to move. And it's like, okay.
It's hard to pull yourself out, and it's hard to pull yourself out because when you do, especially after a year like this past year, you're pulling yourself out, and from what you're remembering of yourself, you're not there. And that's so hard, especially if you were in a really good spot before, because that's all you're thinking about in your head when you step back into the gym. And it's just, that's not true. And that's okay, but like you have to accept it before you put that foot back in the gym.
Yeah, and I think you more than anyone are in a position right now to talk about this from such a great standpoint, because it's a case of you haven't just had the year with COVID and everything else happening. Obviously, not long given birth, 2 beautiful babies. It's like, oh my goodness, you have got everything on your plate at the moment, and you're returning into the gym. So that process is so hard because not only do you have, okay, my body isn't necessarily where it was pre-pregnancy or even from my last meet, but now, you know, you still got like relaxing hormones flowing through your body. You can't do 100% effort what you were doing previously. And actually, you're now kind of going through this like prehab phase to get you back to where you can then take those big jumps up to your stage totals again. So just psychologically, talk to me. How have you found that? Because it just seems crazy to me.
It is crazy. And I've thought about this a lot recently, like in the past couple of weeks, because I feel like, you know, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm very close to being able to pick it up, you know, to put it in one way or another, and to be able to like start to push some weights, throw a belt on, throw some knee sleeves on, not really think about other things other than lifting, right? At least in the gym. But it's been, for me personally, I did not know how I was going to react to this whole thing. Because like I was saying, I've been someone that from as long as I could remember, I've been a mover. And not that I wasn't moving, but a lot of it was out of my control, where I always liked that piece. I could control what I was doing in the gym. I was responsible for that. You know, when I stepped on the soccer field, I could control how fit I showed up. That was important to me. Like that was kind of me showing I care about this game. You know, might not be the best soccer player here, but I can get myself fit to show that I care, you know? Same thing when I show up on the platform, like I take pride in the preparation. So like I want to show up and be prepared. It's not always going to go your way, but as long as I show up as prepared as I can, like I'm cool with that. However, things may play out. The worst meets that I've had are not necessarily the worst total, but the most frustrating meets that I've had is I know the preparation didn't go that well. And it might have been something I could control. Maybe it was something I couldn't control, but one way or another, I kind of knew going into the meet, I'm rolling the dice, right? And like when you're rolling the dice, it doesn't work out usually, but you're hopeful. And then that just always sets you up to be disappointed and frustrated. Part of the process, but whatever. So I really didn't know what to expect. And it's been kind of nice in a way of, it's made me take a step back from that competitive mindset when I was pregnant. And now it's been so humbling. Like, I've never really had to start at zero.
Yeah.
And build back. And of course, this is quick. It's not like someone that's really starting at zero. Like, I have this foundation, and yes, I was healing and all of these things, but still, I was starting at zero for me and having to build back. It's been such a humbling process that now I feel like I'm so much more empathetic to so many of my other lifters that I thought I was before, but I never had the experience.
Yeah, that's such an important point to talk on. Yeah, 100%. Because now you've lived it and you have that empathy because you understand all these other things. Whereas before, like, I'm sure you could probably admit, it's a case of when you haven't experienced it, like, you empathize to a point, but then there's also that kind of like, come on, we can do this. We can get through this. We can get through anything together. And then when you live it and you're like, okay, maybe this is a little bit harder than we can just get through this together. Like, maybe there needs to be a little bit more of a hand holding process here than just the, like, you could do this champ crack on by yourself. So yeah.
And the struggles are different, you know? And I used to think maybe as a coach, like, you have to build the trust, and there's this huge trust, especially when people are going for their PRs, when I know they can hit it, like, no problem, but you're uncertain anytime you put yourself under that barbell with weight that you've never lifted before. It doesn't matter. But in my head, I'm now like, I think there has to be way more trust at that beginning process because that person's thinking I have X, Y, and Z goals, and I'm nowhere close to them. And that's kind of like I felt it when I first started, like, oh God, I have all these goals in my head. Am I crazy? You know, and I've done some crazy things before. So I always remind myself, yeah, you are crazy, but if you follow through, it will all work out, you know? And it's okay to have those lofty goals, but you just have to trust the process, and you can't rush the process.
Yes, I talk about this so much with my clients. And I do think that is the case. If you can get your clients to trust in the process, and it's like, trust and believe in you that there are going to be ebbs and flows of every single training cycle, because, you know, and I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times before, training doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are so many different influences on your training
Sleep
day.
Deprivation.
Oh, I think there's someone in the room that's very qualified to talk about that right now. Like 50% blood, 50% caffeine at this point. Yeah.
It's true though. You know, like, it's hard because people show up to the gym and they have their plan. They want it to go perfectly. But like you're saying, it's not just the gym. It's the other, you know, 22 to 23 hours, however long your training takes you. It's all those other hours that affect that 1 to 2 hours training so much, and that experience so much. And that's okay, you know? And for me, that was one of the things I knew I had to let go when I got pregnant, was to be so by the book. And I used to be that person that would show up and expect a lot. And if I couldn't hit numbers, I'd get so frustrated. And I was very type A about my lifting and my training.
Is this right up until you stop competing? So are you still talking about, you're still like this, like the Arnold Super Total, everything like that? It's okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. So that was an interesting experience, but it was something that, like, I, in a weird way, enjoyed. I wouldn't enjoy it if I was training for something.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, I don't want to track my numbers. I don't want to know, because it's only gonna, like, what good is that gonna do me to see my numbers go down? You know, like,
yeah, it's true.
Or to not be able to complete training one day, you know, like, I don't want to know that. I just want to show up when I can, do the best I can on the days I can, and set more of like a frequency goal. I want to train 3 days this week, and I'm going to show up and do the best I can on those 3 days. And let me tell you, there were weeks that looked very different. Some weeks crushed. Some weeks were tough, and it was just moving, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's the smart thing, isn't it? And I think, I mean, especially when you've been in the game as long as you have, and you've coached the amount of people that you've coached and been coached yourself, is that you can kind of see, okay, like, we don't need to necessarily put these like psychological or physiological restraints on ourselves and be like, okay, like, we can let it go that we've had this slightly shittier week. It's fine. And let's leave that shitty week in that week. and let's approach this new week, and let's not try to bring that negative energy, which again is so easy to say, but so hard to do in principle. So hard to do. So how did you deal with that?
How many times though have you found for yourself or people that you're coaching, not talking like injury or sickness or anything like that, maybe just life things, that you had a shitty week of training, but then they show up the next week and it's like the best week of training in their life because whatever it was, life stresses or who knows, that was outside of the gym drops off and it's just like, oh, okay, I'm actually as strong as I thought I was. It wasn't just like 1 week, all of my strength disappeared.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like when you're in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. It's so weird. Like clients will be like, oh, like I just feel so weak today, and you're like, that's okay. Like you're okay. It's okay to feel weak today, because then in like 3 weeks time, when we break a PB, and you're like, holy shit, I feel so good. You're like, exactly. And if only you could have gone back like 3 weeks ago and been to yourself, been like, hey, trust the process. In 3 weeks time, we're gonna smash that PB. You'll be like, oh, okay. Like this bad day isn't too bad after all. Then like it's all right. We'll get through this. But in the moment, like you said, you're like, well, I mean, I know you're like it as well. Like you just beat yourself up. Like 100%. I am my worst enemy. I am my 100%. Worst critic. And I talk about myself way more negatively than anyone else will ever critique me. And I'm sure you're probably the same, right?
Yes. But okay, let's tell the people, has it ever gone well for you when you've been so hard set on a number and you're having a real shitty day? No.
It really, really messes with you. You just
Or you in your head, you're like, if I was one of my own like athletes, what would I tell them? And you're telling yourself the exact opposite, and you do the exact opposite thing, and then you end up with a back injury for 4 months. Not that I've done that, but you know, it's crazy.
Yeah. No, I've been there before a couple of times where like, I don't know, like I'm going through stuff. I'm just talking about stuff out loud to my girlfriend, and she's like, well, you know what would you tell your clients to do? And I'm like, well, you know what? Let's not go into that right now, okay? This is a different scenario. You're like, in your head, you're like, this isn't a different scenario. She's called you out perfectly on your bullshit. Like, you need to sort this out. It's like, yeah, okay, actually, you know what? Hands up. Yeah, 100%. Like, what would you tell someone else to do? And I think it's really, really hard to sometimes step back and be really subjective about what's going on, like for yourself. And I think this then it leads quite perfectly into the importance of having some form of coach, mentor, supporting team, lifting team, or even just friends that you lift with on a regular basis that are potentially slightly more experienced than you or have been in the game a little bit longer, because then you can have that back and forth. And you can really get an understanding of where you truly are in this space, and not just where you perceive yourself to be in these top 2 inches, which can really, really, really project a completely different vision to what you're actually experiencing. And I'm sure you could probably talk about that too.
For sure. You need someone in your corner that cares about your success, but it's also objective.
Yes.
And you can't do that for yourself. You care about your success, but you can't be objective. No matter how hard you try, you can't be. You can't. You kind of have tunnel vision, and you should, but that's why you need, someone in your corner, or a bunch of people in your corner that can be that person.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously you've been in a position where you've worked with some absolutely fantastic coaches. And I'm really, really interested to kind of get into the whole process for you with obviously huge foundation, great GPP. You come in, smashing the powerlifting, and now you're in a position where you're then bringing Olympic lifting in with Max to tie in with your powerlifting, and now you're going through the Super Totals training. For you, like, had you ever kind of actually been doing that style of training previously in sports? Because a lot of people won't realize that, with a lot of like this, like track stuff and long distance, you'll probably still be doing a little bit of Ollie stuff because it's great for movement and foundational patterns. Had you ever actually touched on it before you kind of got into that? Because for anyone that's like, oh, getting strong, why would I do Olympic lifts with powerlifting? I just want to squat, bench, and deadlift more. And you're like, we need to talk about a few things. So, had you ever actually done that style of training prior to kind of talking to Max and getting involved with that sort of stuff?
So I've done, in strength and conditioning sense, like cleans, like power cleans and things like that. Never snatched. And then a few months before I started working with Max, I started weightlifting at like a local weightlifting club.
Okay.
and was basically just trying to combine that program with my powerlifting program, which doesn't work, in case anyone's wondering. But I didn't know anything about weightlifting, and if you know me, you know I love to squat. So I did a whole lot of squatting because naturally weightlifting loves to squat and powerlifting loves to squat. Didn't bench. And I just basically did things that I wanted to do, and it was fun, but I didn't necessarily make any progress
I'm so glad you touched on that. It
on the
was fun,
powerlifting
but it
side of
didn't
things.
progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once I figured out, like, hey, maybe I want to make a little bit more progress, that's when I started to do a little bit of research and started work with Max and training super total.
Yes, and how for you, because I think anyone that's listening to this that's like never really heard of the super total before, never even kind of realized that this combination of powerlifting and Olympic lifting, which I still think even in the strength sport space is still quite niche,
Yeah,
and
I
it's still
agree.
quite new, but very
It
very
is.
exciting and very very cool. It's kind
Yeah.
of like stripping away all of the other like CV stuff from CrossFit that we don't want to associate ourselves with
Yeah.
too much, and then take all
Right?
the really cool stuff that we're like, yeah, let's do more of this.
Exactly. I don't want to, well, I can't even say that. I was going to say, I don't want to run. And then I was like, who are we kidding? That
Wait,
would be
what?
so hypocritical. I don't want to do butterfly pull-ups.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree. And I think it's super cool. It's definitely super niche. There's not a ton of actual events.
Yeah.
There's a couple here and there, but there's not too many actual super total events around.
Yeah. It's kind of like I
Sometimes
get
I
like
try to make up my
Highland
own,
Game
but
vibes in terms of like the scale of it. Like people that know about the
yes.
Highland Games, they're like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing
Yeah.
ever. Like you have to come and try this out. It's the same with super totals, but it's like everyone else, you're like, wait, what is it that you do again?
Right. And it's kind of funny. And I don't know if it's like this. I don't know. But like powerlifting, weightlifting are two very different worlds. Everyone thinks they're very similar because it's a barbell and you're moving weight and that's it. And they could not be more different.
Yeah.
And not only that, but sometimes like they kind of look at each other like, like, oh, that's the other strength sport. And I'm like,
you're on the same team. We're on the same team, goddammit.
Like everyone just wants to get strong, And then I'll be honest, like, let's be real, powerlifter, and people probably I don't know if people get mad at me, get their little panties in a bunch when I say this, but whatever. Powerlifters are stronger, right? Weightlifters are way more athletic. They just are. They're way more athletic. Like technically what they're doing, like there's no comparison. It's much easier to get into powerlifting than it is to get into weightlifting. And I think that's for sure why powerlifting has exploded, without a doubt, between CrossFit and the fact that it's easy to get into. You can go to any gym and do powerlifting and train for powerlifting as long as they have a barbell. You can't do that for weightlifting. And I think for me, I love being strong. Like there is nothing like loading up a barbell and knowing you can move a ton of weight. Like there's no feeling like throwing a barbell on your back or pulling something off the floor. I wish I could pull more off the floor, but you know what I mean.
It'll come.
And like just makes you feel super badass, like it makes you feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah.
Weightlifting, I don't necessarily, and again, I'm not at the same level, like get that feeling like, I'm so strong, but I feel so athletic. And for me, I love to feel athletic. I come from a background, like you were saying, of huge GGP. Sorry, I didn't sleep much. GPP.
We got baby brain, it's fine.
Huge athletic, lots of different motions, like fast explosive motions, multiplanar motions. And then to go to powerlifting, it's very different. And I felt very strong, but I felt very unathletic. So mixing the two for me was kind of the best of both worlds. Like I get to feel athletic and I get to feel super strong. Perhaps it's going to make my progress a little bit slower in both sports, but I'm okay with that. Like, heck, I don't think I'm going anywhere. So like, whatever.
Yeah, but I don't even necessarily know, because I think, and there are so many different powerlifting programs out there that call for so many different facets of strength training. Do you know what I mean? But I think when you look at the feedback that you're getting from your body with your Olympic lifting,
oh yeah,
in terms of the functionality. So the fact that you're actually going to be stimulating so many of these muscles that you aren't just battering day in and day out with your like SBD training. It's a case of I think, you know, yes, it's a technical movement and there is huge potential for things to go wrong, but because you're moving your body in a way that you aren't in all these other patterns, that actually is helping you with your injury prevention, because you don't have that overstimulus. You're not going to be getting that tendonitis quite so much. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to be screwing up the knees quite so much, et cetera, et cetera.
I actually couldn't agree more with that part, especially for me, weightlifting. Like, my strength ability and weightlifting is like here, and no one can see this because it's a podcast, but it's fine. It's like high.
Now they can see video on YouTube. So YouTubers, you can see what's going on here. Everyone else, just imagine.
Yeah, just imagine one hand's really high. And my technical ability is like much lower. Yeah. So, you know, for me, weightlifting wise, it's still a little bit lower cost in terms of like injury risk, I think, just because my strength is so much higher than my technical ability. But for me, like you're saying, injury prevention, I think without a doubt, it has helped me stay injury free and will help me stay in the sport longer. And then I think the other thing is burnout. Like, it's helped me not feel like I'm just hammering, and not feel like, let's be honest, sometimes it takes a year to get a kilo, you know, like when you get to a certain part on a lift. And I don't know, some people can do it. I don't know if I would be able to do it and that be my sole focus. I think I would have a really, really hard time with that. And this has allowed me to, you know, dabble in different areas, but still be able to work for that kilo.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing, is that even though you're doing all of this, you in the background, you've still got one foot on the gas the whole time. Do you know what I mean? Like in the macro perspective, you are still getting closer to where you want to be. And just like you said there, like you're almost in that like potential phase, like the potentiation phase of your Olympic lifting, because you know structurally you can put some crazy numbers out there. And the fact that you're like, okay, this is great because I know I've got way more. I know I can lift way more. But now I have to hammer myself to get so clinically perfect with all of these positions. But then those positions and forcing myself to stay strong in them then carries back across to my powerlifting.
100%. There's no doubt, like, my core and my back so much stronger. And there's no doubt the amount, and this is almost weird because weightlifters don't necessarily have a huge amount of upper body mass, but the amount of like upper body muscle I put on when I started weightlifting from shrugging and pressing so much was crazy. And 100% carried over my bench. My bench exploded when I started weightlifting.
Oh yeah. Just everything in that upper back, like you said. And again, it's really interesting because in terms of the programming, the way that everything's laid out, the fact that you're having to do all of those positions where you're getting all those shrugs in, now it's a case of that we don't have to take any extra time to put into auxiliary work to work your traps and bring up your upper back and bring up your rear delts, because just being in that overhead position repeatedly over and over again does it all for you. So you're like, okay, well now I've cut out all of that and replaced it with one lift. Right. Or variations of that lift. Like, and I think that's pretty cool as well. Like we were talking about, it's variation, but not having to stray too far away and throw in all these other different stimuli, which can obviously like slow the recovery process, or do you know what I mean? Like there's so many moving factors.
And not to say, I've thought about it, like, could I just do powerlifting? I've thought about it a lot. I've never just done powerlifting. Before I did Super Total, I was running in powerlifting.
Which is insane. The energy systems are completely different, and you're just smashing it. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was like you're like up your animal. Mind. But I think in this, like, the same respect, I like volume. I just do. Like, that huge amount of volume, I feel like I've had it my whole life. Like, you know, practices and weight room, you're training for 4 hours a day. Gymnastics, you're training for 4 hours a day. Like, there's just always been this huge amount of volume, which isn't for everybody. No. It's one of the first things I say. It's not for everybody. And it's one of the most important questions I think I ask some of my athletes is, how long do you want to spend in the gym? And not do you think you should, how long do you want to? We can make it fit. It might change a couple things, but if it's 45 minutes, we're going to make it 45 minutes. Because if we make it 2 hours, in 3 months, you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
Some people are like, I want to be in that gym for 3 hours. Okay, cool. Usually you probably with friends too, even better. You're going to stay and you're going to be in this lifting community forever. Like, anyways, I'm getting really sidetracked. I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no, not
But
at all, not at all. No, but you're so right. And hopping off on that point, because I think it's really, really important, is that the fact that you need to do that. You need to
right.
listen to the client. You need to listen and understand their requirements. And if it's a case of that, as a coach, you instinctually want to be programming 2.5 hour fucking sessions and they can only fit 45 minutes in, you need to step back as a coach and be like, what am I doing here? Like,
Right.
am I just pushing everything that I've learned onto this person? Or am I being instinctual and being like, okay, we can't do all of those things. How do we condense? How do we specify? And how do we get the best out of it for you? And then that just goes to show it's not about you, it's about the
Right.
client.
Yep. The other huge learning process, and this is kind of switching, like as a coach, especially with lifting, is how, and this is again, just like individuals, right? Like everyone is so different, which is awesome. Like that's, I think the coolest part about being a coach is how different everybody is and how many different stimuluses can work for the same goal, I think is cool too, right?
Yeah.
But how quickly people also get through exercises is so different person to person,
Yeah.
and to no fault of their own. Sometimes it's just like maybe someone's coming in without a ton of GPP and they literally need that rest, right? Maybe it's someone that gets really distracted by their training. Maybe they're training with their best friends, but maybe they still only have a certain amount of time. Like, right, there's so many different variables, and knowing why it's taking a certain amount of time. Like, I've just realized that as I've coached longer and longer, ask more questions, like, how long is this session taking you? Because in my mind, I have an idea of how long it would take, but how long is it actually taking you?
Yeah.
And if it's taking way longer, are you limited by like your cardio? Like, do you literally need more rest, or are you finding yourself distracted? And should I put a timer on for 2 minutes? But like, how am I going to help you get the most out of every session? And like, it's so different depending on where people are at, what they're doing in the gym, what their personality is.
Yeah.
My personality in the gym, for the most part, is like, I want to get in, I want to get my work done. I don't want to really like socialize unless I'm going to the gym to socialize. Like, to me, that's like an event. Like, I have friends that are in the lifting community, not now, obviously. No, I have friends still in the lifting community, but I can't go meet up with them now.
Yeah.
But in general, I used to love setting aside like a Saturday. I knew I could go to the gym, spend 6 hours there. I'd still get all my training in, but like, we're having a good time.
Yeah.
It's not every day that I want to do that, but I want to do it every once in a while, and I want to have a blast and not worry about time.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really interesting topic to kind of hop off on as well, because I mean, I know for myself, like when I go into my training and stuff, I really, really struggle. I train in the place that I work as well. So I'm a trainer and a coach. I spend all of my time in that space. I'm with clients in that space, and then I'm coaching in that space, and I'm surrounded by people that know me on a daily basis. And anytime that familiarity happens, people want to chat, people want to talk. But for talking about myself as an athlete, when you're an athlete and you're like, okay, it's game time, I've got to get this done. I've got 2 hours to fit in this workout that should probably take me a little bit longer than this. And then it's like, hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy? And you're like, okay, my headphones are in. Like, I don't want to be an asshole, but I really got to get on with this because, exactly. If I'm not to the minute, that's it. I'm screwing myself over. So, and again, especially for you, with everything that you kind of been through, the obviously rise to fame and familiarity with all of your incredible lifts, obviously all of the records that you hold. How do you balance that? Because I know that you are a social butterfly to a point, but when you have those sessions where you're like, okay, guys, got to cut it off, got to get this done. How do you approach that? Because it's such a difficult thing to not come across as like an asshole, but be like, hey guys, boundaries now, like, got to get this done.
Yep. It's hard. I mean, it's easier for me now because I work out in my garage. But back in the day when I didn't always work out in my garage, it was challenging, and it is like, some of it is just letting the people around you know, which can be hard. Some of it is, like you're saying, you have headphones, you're hoping people take on the cue. You know, some of it is you're trying to be a little bit more heads down, which if you are a social person, like that should seem different to people, like another social cue, you know? But it is hard too, because one of the best parts, let's be honest, about strength sports is the community.
Yeah.
So it's like that
100%.
balance sometimes. And when push comes to shove, everyone that's in the community knows, like, if you have to get work done, you're getting work done. And I feel the same way. Like, I feel like you can totally feel like you're kind of being a little bit of an asshole. Like if you're like, oh, but everyone gets it. Like, oh, okay, you know, like see you tomorrow. But that's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard, but you just kind of have to put your head down. I've also gone at really weird times. I'll say that too. Like, you know, like
3 a.m. You're like, no one's here. Yeah, let's get it.
yeah, like how can I avoid people? That sounds terrible. But sometimes if you got to do what you got to do.
To be fair, I used to be a part of a 24-hour gym, and I'd train at like, sometimes I'd go at like 10 o'clock at night or whatever. Like that would be my thing. It'd be like Friday night, because it was really close to town as well. So I'd be in the gym, and as I'm going into the gym, you're seeing like all these girls walking past in short skirts and high heels, like all getting ready to go out, and like all the lads like drinking, and I'm there like, pre-workout at 10 o'clock at night, like let's warm up with some squats. It's gonna be a late one. It's like, yeah, but then there's no one else around, and you're like,
yeah,
is there a better feeling? Like obviously you get it every day because you train in your
really.
garage, but in terms of like having like, oh look, I've got this space, I've got like no one else around, I don't have to wait to get in a rack or this or that, or do you know what I mean? It's like, it's an amazing
for sure. It kind of is. Or I used to like, I live outside of Boston in Massachusetts now. I was in Jersey for a while, and I trained in a CrossFit gym. I like rented, basically you could rent platform time. So I was time limited. So I had to get in and get out. Problem was, usually I would still have like some accessory stuff I'd have to do, and I have to go to regular gym. Fine. But I would find like weird nooks and crannies too, you know, that you knew you could go and like hammer whatever accessories you had to. And then sure, if you wanted to socialize, you could socialize after, you know, or what have you. So it is hard, but it is important, because you can't spend, although we all want to spend all of our days at the gym.
Yeah, we can't. We know that we have to remove ourselves sometimes from that place. Yeah, 100%. So in terms of kind of for you, for kind of looking forward to where things are going to be pushing now, obviously all up in the air. You've obviously got it's not a long process ahead of you, because of course you know, you've got a fantastic training base, you've got a fantastic training age, and you still have a foundation that is actually probably stronger and broader than 90% of people that are training right now. So how are you kind of feeling moving forward for you? Are there any big things that you really want to kind of push towards? Is it for you at this point in time just feeling good, moving good, and getting back to, you know, just being in that place in yourself? Because I know like when you lose it, and I've been there before, kind of like you talk about it, like you fall off the wagon and it's like, and then you come back to it, and you kind of have to go through that journey of kind of rediscovery a little bit. What's it going to be for you?
It's a tough question.
It is. I'm throwing some hard ones at you today. I'm making that baby brain think.
Oh man, I think that's a question a lot of people are probably thinking about this year, regardless of if you're a new, intermediate, advanced, elite, whatever, after the past year, because heck, things did not go to your plan, no matter what happened. So a big thing for me before the Arnold last year, Raw Nationals was in October before the Arnold. So like say my training cycle previously over the past summer of, forget years now because it's
like 2019, Corona. Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But like Corona has corrupted my whole like year.
Yeah, because we've lost a year. Yeah.
Yes.
Like so last year.
I keep calling things 2020, and people are like, "You didn't do that in 2020 because no one did anything in 2020." It's like, okay. In 2019, I had a little bit of a back injury, and it like really made me hated training, because I was showing up to training, to be completely honest, and I know I don't think that anyone will take this the wrong way, but I feel like whenever I say it, it just kind of sounds like not conceited, but you know what I mean? Like I was showing up to the training with the goal in mind of winning, like winning my next meet, winning the next, whatever the goal was. Like that was why I was showing up to training. So when I got hurt, that changes everything, right? And I like had not accepted that. So I was still showing up with the same mindset, and training was awful. Like I hated it. I was questioning if I'd still wanted to do it at some points in time. And I went to nationals and I hated it. And it was one of the most frustrating meets of my life. Again, because of expectations and hoping and maybe it will just happen, you know?
It's all in here, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't happen with injuries. Like we were saying, like sometimes you have a shitty week and you show up the next week and it's the greatest training week of your life. That does happen, but not if it's an injury.
But you're hoping that that's going to be the case. You're hoping that you're going to get underneath the bar and you're like, no more shoulder pain.
Exactly.
You're like,
exactly.
oh, it's still there.
Yep. And I was probably in the best shape of my so far life right before it happened, which is always what happens, right? I was like, yes, like this is it, like 2019, we're going to have the year. And then obviously whatever. So the training cycle for me from Raw Nationals to the Arnold, I knew after Raw Nationals, I had to take a step back. Like I was like, I don't want to see a training plan. I don't want to see a spot
in yourself though? Did you speak to anyone else about that at that time? What any coaches like, hey, Megan, like, we're noticing this and this, just in yourself, like in training.
You're really blowing lately. No, it was myself. I think I was in denial the whole training cycle before. So it wasn't like it was like a quick realization by any means. I went to Raw Nationals and it wasn't even the performance per se, which wasn't my best, but it was how I felt warming up. And like, I was also like peeing all over the platform, even when I was warming up, which I know it's not normal for anyone. I know some people have more issues with incontinence than others, but like it had never, ever, 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 ever been a problem for me.
Yeah.
So, like that was a huge red flag, even when it's not a max, you know, not even close to a max lift, like 50%. Like this is a problem. And then when I was warming up, it was like, okay, like I'm realizing these things. I'm seeing all these people that I know around me. And I'm like, I just feel like off, you know, like something wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I started to feel like my body and my brain were like disconnected in a way, you know? And so after that, I was like, let's just take a step back for, you know, a little bit and slowly rebuild and go into the Arnold that way with a mindset of showing up to the Arnold and having some fun. And I did. I had a blast. Like, again, weightlifting was my best meet, but powerlifting wasn't. One of them are never, I know when I go and do these crazy things, one of them's going to take a hit. You know, it's usually whichever one's second, but whatever. One of them's going to take a hit.
You're like, let's just flip the coin. Which one's going to weightlifting today? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't even like do that good in terms of I might have gone like, I think I went 7 for 9, maybe not even.
If I'm correct, I think
6 for 9.
Yeah.
It wasn't even good that way, but I had so much fun because I just, you know, like was
Let
like,
it go.
Whatever. Yes. And that was when I kind of in my mind was like, hey, we were talking about having my husband and I like a baby at this point, obviously I was pregnant very soon after. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to be okay on the other side because I'll be okay showing up for me with the purpose of having fun. And that wasn't true before. Like before I was showing up because I had a goal of winning. And there is nothing wrong with either mindset. And you can be very good and have either mindset. But for me, mine had to change for me personally. Yeah. And now that I'm on this side, I know I could do both things. Like I could go in either direction. The first meet I do, I'm going to show up and I'm going to have some fun, you know, and then see where it takes me. Let things unfold as they do. But I'm not going to put an expectation on myself of showing up and bringing my best stuff my first meet back, you know, like too much pressure.
Yeah, 100%. But like I love kind of like what you've said with like the whole process where it's like, to an extent, I think we are not putting myself in the same bracket as you, but anyone else, anyone that's like has been at an elite level or is at an elite level, when you keep scaling and you keep scaling and you kind of get to that point where like you have to have some humble pie. You have to get kicked in the fucking teeth, and you have to take that step back, whether it's a case of that you yourself do it as an athlete or you're forced into it through injury or whatever it might be. Like for me, it was injury. I've torn my ACL. I've only got like 50% of my right pec. Like everything on me is busted to hell.
Who needs it?
Exactly, right?
What do you do, strongman or something?
yeah, exactly. It's all good. I don't need a pec. Who needs that? But the thing is that it's kind of forced upon you if you don't do it yourself. But then when you come back to it, you are approaching it from a completely different standpoint. And it almost, I feel like it unlocks your true potential, because you're like, I understand, I respect it, and now I'm choosing to step forward. Like, let's go.
I always say, and I am a true believer that this can be the mindset for someone that's doing their first meet or someone that is going to worlds year over year and winning, right? In whatever sport they're in. Like you can be the most elite level or a beginner. But usually you start off showing up, you want your PRs, you want to hit all your lifts, you want everything to go perfectly, right? And sometimes that happens and you progress rapidly and everything goes perfectly and you don't necessarily hit a hitch. Or sometimes, you progress a little bit more slowly, but either way, at some point in time, you're going to hit, like you're saying, some type of hurdle. Sometimes it's a big hurdle. Sometimes it might just be having a shitty meet. Like bombing out or whatever. You have off days. It happens. What happens after that? That's when you realize who loves the sport for the sport and just wants to be in it. And we'll see that mindset shift. And then I call it like you're a lifer at that point. You'll come in, you'll come out. You might have years where you go hard. You might have years you're a little bit more laid back, but you're a lifer. And then there'll be people that realize, it was fun, but I'm going to try something else now, which is absolutely okay. When I have athletes come to that point, and I'm sure you've had the same, and you kind of like coaching them through that, it's like, don't force it. There's no reason you have to do this. If you want to do it, then let's make it work. But if you feel like you're trying to force something, you're trying to fit like a square peg in a circle hole, whatever that's like.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears. Or maybe let me help you find something else. Because there's so many things out there and you should be able to enjoy whatever you're doing at the end of the day.
Yes, this is exactly it. Like there are so many people out there that are like, I just hit the squat, bench and deadlift because they think that that's just all they should be doing. Do you know what I mean? It's like there are so many people out there that they're forcing themselves. And I think when we actually use the term like actually forcing themselves, like they're not doing it, but they're not getting the emotional drive out of it. They're not getting that sensation of feeling good and feeling great and being under a bar, and it's like, oh man, this feels good for my body. Like for someone like yourself or myself, like we kind of need to have that and we feed off of that. But for some other people, it does the complete opposite. And as a coach, you have to be like, okay, well, if that isn't floating your boat, why don't we find something that is going to float your boat? Because then you want to do more of it. You want to do it instinctually. I don't have to be up your ass all the time to be like, hey, have you got this done? Have you got that done? You just want to do it. And then what happens with them? Progress goes through the roof. They get all the training adaptations that they've been looking for. And now they've formed a positive habit with something that they actually like. Right.
It's amazing. I mean, as a coach, the reason I coach is I always say like people first, right? You're a person first and then you're an athlete. And I want you as a person to help you be happy and healthy. And I know how my role in your life to help you do that is to be physical, right? To train. Yes, you might have come to me and you might have these goals, say for powerlifting. Most of my athletes are powerlifters. Maybe that's in the end though, not what's going to be the best. And that's okay. Like that's totally okay.
Yeah. 100%. And I think it's again that comes with your training age and experience as a coach as well, and kind of being able to step back and subjectively look at kind of what the road ahead has
Yeah.
for your clientele and your athletes. And it's like, okay, is this what I want to be reinforcing?
I
Or
know.
actually perhaps maybe there might be a better way around this.
And I feel like some people may think like they're quitting, right? Or they're giving up. And
Yeah.
that like has such a negative connotation. And it's like, look at all the things I've done. AKA, I've quit those things at some point in my life. I gave up on those things. Like, it's okay. Because guess what? I went through soccer. I went through gymnastics. I tried to play basketball. I'm very short. Terrible idea. Tried to play basketball at one point in time. I tried ice skating. They told me I shouldn't ice skate because I have weak ankles. Not even kidding. I tried to do ballet. They told me I had weak ankles too. I guess I have weak ankles. They're like, you should quit while you're ahead. I tried running distances. I tried doing Ironman. It took me a long time of quitting to find out what I actually liked to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's okay because it might lead you to where you should end up.
I love that
Opens
you brought
another
that up.
door.
Yeah,
It
it's so
opens another
true.
door.
It's so true. But with every single one of those experiences, you grow as an individual and you grow as an athlete. And I think that's so important. Like, I was the exact same. Started off through rugby, like I did rugby from like 6 to 18, got to a really high standard, then fell out of that. And I was like, what do I do with my body now? And then got into like track and field, did shot put, did discus, got into Olympic lifting, got into this, got into that. And now, after like doing like a very short stint of bodybuilding, I then found strongman. And it's like, and now I'm like, oh my God, where has this been all of my life? Like, if only I had this when I was 16.
Right? I feel like it's like the lights go off. I'm so jealous of the people that find, not necessarily lifting. And sometimes I say that, like, oh, I'm so jealous you found lifting so early. In reality, what I mean is like, you found your thing that early. That's awesome. That's incredible. Like, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I'm sure I wouldn't change anything else that led me up to where I was, because mentally I would not be the same lifter as I am, without a doubt. Physically, I wouldn't either, you know? But the mentally, no way. It's like each experience builds on the next, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think you are probably the perfect person to highlight quite that in terms of the road to how you've got here. When you look at it on paper, you're like, what the fuck is going on? But then when you look at it from a scientific standpoint and you're like, okay, well, without even realizing it, look at the, we talk about like training is like in a pyramid. Look at the base of the pyramid that you have created here. It is so wide. We always talk about the fact that with training, if you're building a base, your peak is going to be as tall as your base. Like, you need to have a solid base to be able to get to that peak. And the fact that you've done all these different things brings so many different facets to the table that when you can eventually find a way to transition them into the world of powerlifting or super totals or whatever it is, it's like, okay, damn, we got a lot of potential here that actually the vast majority of these athletes probably won't have. And I think that's really, really important, is that you spoke about it earlier, is that we're all individualistic, individualistic. And that is actually our superpower, because you are different to every other person that is going to step on that platform after you or before you. And you all bring something slightly different. And to compare ourselves to each other, I think is really, really, really tough because of that exact point. We are so individualistic, but it's so easy to do. We see ourselves as human beings. We're weightlifters, we're powerlifters, we're this, we're that. You're like, actually, no. We need to take a step back. You're physiologically different. You've got all these adaptations that are different. How can you expect to elicit the same response as her or him or him or him? Just do what you can with your body that you have created. And I think that's really, really, really important. I know that you love to kind of talk about individuals being individuals and how you have to kind of really respect that.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of my training, probably, let's say even after, probably in college and then after, I think a lot of people probably thought I was a little bit, strange, crazy, whatever, however you want to say, you know what I mean? With the different things that I tried to do and different things I tried to combine, and what is she doing? And I was having fun. You know what I mean? Like it worked for me. But yes, like all of those different experiences add on to one another. And I really dislike so much when you want to try something and it might be a out there idea. It might be a crazy idea and you want to try something and then you're almost like shot down and discouraged, you know, by someone who should be encouraging, possibly educating, right, to keep you safe, but encouraging whatever your loftiest ideas and goals are. Right. So it's like, I think one of the biggest things as I've gotten older and older that I've come to learn is that I might have some crazy ideas and I'm going to find people that support that. Will tell me our objective, can tell me what I need to be told, what needs to be done to get there, shoot me down when I need to be shot down.
Yeah.
You know, tell me if I'm way out of the park and I need to reel it back in, but that aren't just going to be like, that's not a good idea. I wouldn't do that. And to be honest, when I started weightlifting, I know I mentioned I went to like a local gym and I was weightlifting. That was one of the biggest things, that it was always, you should quit powerlifting, you should quit powerlifting, you should quit powerlifting. And it just like started to rub me the wrong way. And push comes to shove. I think it was the 2 weeks before the Arnold. And at this time I had moved to Jersey, but I came back up here to compete like with the team that I was training with. And the first thing that was said was, have you quit powerlifting yet? And I was like, nope. And that's when I knew like, I got to find something else. And that's ironically, I met Max 2 weeks later. Right. So again, every door leads to another, whatever.
That is crazy.
I'm not kidding you. 2 years later, I'm back up in Boston. I go to a local gym. One of the coaches comes in, and this was the coach that I really liked. So this was like a punch in the gut. And I was dropped into the gym training. He came in and, you know, I was squatting. And he was like, so, did you quit powerlifting yet? And I was like, are you kidding? Like, that's the first thing you're going to say to me? Like, not even like, hey, that looks a little bit better than 2 years ago. You know, it was just like, and I was like, no, actually, I'm going to Worlds. And he was like, oh, so like, are you going to quit after that? And I was like, I'm going to leave. Like, why are we discouraging people? Yeah.
Are you listening to what I'm saying?
Why are we discouraging people? You know, like we should be encouraging people to do these things. When you're an adult, you don't have things like when you were a kid as much, that outside of work that you can have some type of gratification, delayed gratification. You can set some type of goals that are outside of work, unrelated to work. And this is one way we can do that. Why can't we find a way to help people grow the best that we can, you know?
Yeah.
That was a really long rant.
I was like, that makes me angry. And it wasn't even me that experienced it. Like, I want to go and speak to this guy now. Hey, man.
Right? Yeah, right? But I guess too, this is a lesson for anyone that is thinking about something in their head and looking to an expert, right? Expert coach to get their opinion, to get their advice. If what you're being told doesn't fit with what's in your gut, ask somebody else. And I'm not saying like ask mom, ask dad, like keep asking until you get the answer you want.
Yeah.
Do your research, right? Know what you're capable of, know what fits within your lifestyle, but your coach should be your biggest fan. They really should, you know? And that doesn't mean they're not going to give you tough love, but they should be your biggest fan. They shouldn't try to limit your growth as a person.
Yeah, 100%. That literally goes in the face of everything that a coach is about. Do you know what I mean? In terms of actually growing and excelling the process and speeding up the process of this growth for the individual athlete. It honestly, it fries my brain that people would do that to even yourself at that standard. But it just goes to show that, you know, even in this world now, there is still, unfortunately, there is still a little bit of that close-mindedness, and that there are potentially coaches out there that aren't like yourself or myself that will openly discuss this thing, and that they are very rooted in their own individual ways. And that I think now more than ever, having access to this, having access to social media, having access to this plethora of education and information and various different you know, social media stars or icons or
Mm-hmm.
athletes or whatever you want to call them. We're now in an age where it's so much easier. Like you talk about like the fact that when you first started off, it's like the game it's like night and day. It's night and day, because you couldn't hop online and be like, I'm just going to research this. I'm just going to speak to this person. Oh, I'm just going to send a DM to Max or whatever. It's like, oh, no. You're like, I know Jared who did some weightlifting. I know Mark that used to do weightlifting. And I know that Sharon's dad also used to do some weightlifting. So I'm going to go talk to these guys, and whatever they learn, they're going to give to me as like a hand-me-down. And then I'm just going to hope that that's good information that I can excel. And it's like, fucking crazy. It's crazy.
It's nuts. The amount of information that is at your fingertips these days. And I hope in so many ways, and I know it doesn't, but like, I hope that it doesn't stop the whole trial and error, you know, the beauty of it, because that's one thing that you're like, oh, there's all this information online. There is, and there's solid information, and absolutely. But in terms of a coach, like, I hope coaches are still like, that's the beauty of the sport. It's an art. It's an art, you know, like, there's science. Of course there is. And I love science. I'm a science person, but it's also an art. I love it.
Yeah. And
that's
what
the
you
fun
spoke
part.
about earlier is that there is no one singular way to get the job done. And that's what I love about it. It's like, you can come from here, from here, from here, from here. Like, even places that you're like, really? Is that
doesn't
going
make
to
any
help?
sense.
Yeah. And then you do it and you're like,
right? My first powerlifting meet, I had squatted before, like in the weight room and whatever, but in my head, I'm like, powerlifting, different sport. I need to squat different. Let me give this a Google. Again, social media, not a thing. Gave it a Google, watched a YouTube. I think it was a YouTube. I don't even know. And I was like, oh, okay. Yep. Do you need to change this, and this? Did it. I was watching like how to squat for clip lifting. Didn't know that at the time. So if you go back and look at like my first meet ever, I squat completely different than I ever squatted before and that I squat now. And I'm like sitting back in my heels. My stance is like super wide. And then all of a sudden it was like, ding, different sport.
God,
Same,
that's
different.
amazing. Oh my goodness. You're like, oh my God, I don't feel anywhere near as stable in this bottom position. Like, what is going on? You're like, oh yeah, it's because you don't have the feedback of that triple ply suit holding you in position.
What are knee wraps? No.
Like, what are these fun kind of things that are all wrapped up in? What's going on here? You're like, can I get that? No. Oh, okay.
People don't have that joy these days, you know?
No, you're right. You're right. They don't. Yeah. Oh, geez. It's such a learning process. Oh, that's amazing. Now, I love to wrap up the podcast in the same way with everyone because I think it's very, very interesting. So, quick question. I want you to imagine for a split second that you are stepping into a time machine. And as you step into this time machine, you are taken back to when you're around 10, 11, 12 years of age. You know, very, very formative years of our youth. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You've got so many things that you've yet to achieve and overcome and go through. And in those few moments, you get to impart a bit of wisdom, knowledge, a mantra, a way to live your life, just something to give to your younger self to help her get through everything that you've gone through to where you are today. In those few moments, what do you say to your younger self?
I would say that it's okay to fail. Very short, but like, it's okay to fail. And like, every failure like teaches you something that you need to know for the next stage. Sounds very simple, but man, everyone's going to fail. I had some real big failures, and if I knew that I could pick myself up a little bit quicker from them, it would have, been nice.
I completely agree. And there are some people out there that, you know, you look at them and you're like, well, they haven't failed yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's inevitable. You're going to face it at some point. That there is a physiological ceiling, which is why we need to take on board adaptations to grow. So yeah, like everyone is going to hit it at some point or another. And when you do, that's when the real learning process starts.
Mm-hmm.
100%, 100%. No, I completely agree with that. I love that, Megan. Thank you so much for coming on board. This has been an absolute
Thank
blast.
you.
I mean, I'm looking at my clock. I can literally talk to you all day. This is
No,
absolutely
sorry.
flown by.
Running my mouth over here.
It's fine. I love it. It's awesome,
On
awesome,
my
awesome.
17th cup of coffee. So one
It's fine.
giant day.
The next week is one giant day for you.
Yeah.
So obviously really, really exciting to kind of see you coming back into everything. Obviously all the best with your training.
Thank you.
Really, really excited to eventually hopefully see you get back out there and in front of a crowd again and do what you love to do and perform. I know, right? Just saying it sounds weird, but
It does.
we'll get there. We will get there. I believe.
Yeah.
Please, we need this, people. We need this. But
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I think there's still a load of things to come. And honestly, just thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for everything that you're putting out there. Your Instagram is absolutely amazing for content. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really informative. Really educational, especially with everything that you're going through with kind of like the prehab, rehab stuff with everything post-pregnancy. So if anyone's out there that is interested, please do hop across and check that out because there's some really, really valuable information there. But apart from that, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll definitely
Thanks for having me
on again. Yeah, it's been sick.
Thank you.